Okay, thank you.
Okay, it being 7 o'clock, again, we're being recorded, just to remind everyone. Vice Chair will read off old new business.
First on the agenda is the approval of minutes from March 8th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of the March 8th meeting, 2018.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried. It being 7 o'clock, first on the docket is the, the continued hearing from March 8th on the petition of 714 Bedford Street Realty Trust, also as the 714 Bedford Street LLC, 2 Tiffany Lane, Rockland, for a special permit under 175-21A4, a multi-unit residential dwelling in a highway commercial zone, and a special permit under 175-35 to construct in the floodplain and wetlands protection overlay district at 714 Bedford Street. Property is located on Assessors Plan 46, Plot 6, on the highway commercial zone.
Okay, just to clarify that the planning board they wrote here that the planning board is in the meeting Monday, April 2nd, 2018, review the request, considered the refile of the application with the Zoning Board of Appeals under G7C 40A16. The project address is 714 Bedford Street. Planning board voted under General Law C40A16 to consider the reapplication to the Zoning Board of Appeals of the property at 714 Bedford Street. Board noted that it is a mixed-use property originally filed with changes to residential use. This does not satisfy the planning board, does not satisfy the site plan review. Okay. And there was other things here, hold on one second. There we go.
Isn't there something from Deputy Chief?
No,
Who wasn't on that one?
no, she's right here. Another note from the planning board to Nancy, pretty much saying the same thing about the meeting. Board has not committed to, just right there, same thing. You want to read a couple of these off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I want to.
Thank you. This is from, to the Abington Zoning Board from Rob Ryerson and John Rye LLC, support for neighbor at zone hearing. Dear board members, I am the owner of the property at 721 Bedford Street, which is across the street from 714 Bedford Street. We've received notices of the various hearings regarding the proposed construction of new residential units at 714 Bedford Street. I believe that the proposed project will benefit my property and could help increase my property's value. Please accept this letter as confirmation that we support this project and hope that the zoning board will approve it. Thank you. Very truly yours, Robert Ryerson. Second is Abington Zoning Board of Appeals. Dear Zoning Board, we are Paul and Carol Maloney. We are the owners of the property at 748 Bedford Street. Under the name 748 Bedford Street Realty Trust, we are direct abutters to the property at 714 Bedford Street. It is our understanding that the Zoning Board will be holding a hearing on April 12th regarding a petition to obtain approval to construct 11 condominium units at 714 Bedford Street, that the new building will replace the existing building. We also know that a completely updated drainage system will be installed on their property. Wish to express support for this petition and regret that we're unable to attend your meeting. A new building with new life will be a benefit to this portion of Bedford Street, and we welcome the investment the owner is willing to make. Please vote to approve the petition on April 12th. Sincerely, Carol J. Maloney and Paul S. Maloney.
Okay, after reviewing proposal plan for 714 Bedford Street, as it pleased me, Mr. Justberg?
Mr.
Justberg. Changing to residential use and bring a long overdue facelift. As an abutter, previous commercial use at 714 Bedford Street has done little to no capital improvement to the building or the grounds for 20-plus years, it would be nice to see a positive change in the area. Says he supports the residential development. Okay? All right.
Do you, Mr. Chairman, you want to just mention who will be voting on?
Yes, exactly. Since the three of us, Dennis, John, and I were at the last meeting, when we went over this, with the voting, okay? All right. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, sir.
Well, actually, before we begin that, don't we have an issue to do with 40A, Section 16, Mr. Chairman?
He just read the letter.
What are we saying? I'm sorry.
He read the letter. So Chapter 48, Section 16, which we had a meeting about the last time, says that you can come back if there's a change, if the planning board thinks that there's, can recommend that you come back. But the planning board is not the authority that decides whether there's a change. It's actually the permit granting authority, which is the zoning board, right? So, Mr. Chairman, the very first question that we have to deal with is Chapter 48, Section 16, all right? And I note that it's a three-step process. So the first step is to do with the planning board. All but one of the members of the planning board must give consent for the appeal to proceed after notice is given to the parties in the interest of the time and place of the proceedings when the question of such consent will be considered. Now, this issue was listed in the agenda of April, I think it was April 3rd, whatever it was, of the planning board, and they wrote a letter, okay? The second thing is the permit granting authority, the ZBA, must weigh the reapplication and find by a supermajority vote, here a unanimous vote of the three-member ZBA, that specific and material changes have occurred in the conditions upon which the unfavourable decision was based. Okay? And then the third one is the permit granting authority, the ZBA, if they do decide that there is a change, must describe such changes in the record of its proceedings. So those are the three steps that we have to take in this. The planning board has done its part. Now we have to decide whether the reapplication is actually a change from the previous application. Is that what you want Mr. Riley to speak on, whether it's a change? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You want to do that preliminary? I would assume that's going to be part of your final decision. You want to do it preliminarily, you mean, kind of?
Yes, because if we come to this decision, either one way or another, we either go forward with the actual project or we don't, right? Would that be right?
I would agree with you.
that?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
for the record, I'll just state, not as to be obstinate, I don't believe Chapter 48-16 applies to this project. I would cite you to the Rainey versus Nantucket case. I did bring copies of that.
Well, we have it here anyway. We
Okay.
don't need to look at that.
And just from my point of view, the Rainey versus Nantucket case applied 48, Section 16. And 48, Section 16 is designed to do two things: to prevent people from reapplying the same project repeatedly to wear down a board or to wear down a butters. So it has a 2-year bar. You cannot submit the same thing within 2 years. However, if it is a different plan, you can resubmit. If it is the same plan or very, very similar plan, you have to go to the planning board to get consent. And this is all based on the assumption that the original project was denied by the zoning board, or whoever the special permit granting authority was. So on the assumption that the first project was denied, which it was, to return to the zoning board, you either have to have a different plan, or you can come back with the same plan as long as the planning board consents. This is my interpretation, and this is the Rainey case's interpretation. The Rainey case says, if it's on its face a different plan, if it's a different use, if it's a different proposal, you don't have to go back to the planning board. You come here. The Rainey case says, if it is very similar, and there's only minute changes, and as I mentioned in our previous night hearing, you could actually have the same exact site plan, but there might be something that changed, like the zoning bylaws, drainage restrictions, sewer moratoriums, things like that. You could submit the same plan, but that's when it kicks in, that the zoning board now has to explain, if they're looking at the same plan that they previously denied, how, if they decide to now approve it, they have to lay out what has changed. What are the specific material conditions that have changed? basically, you got to explain yourself to the general public. How did you deny it the first time and approve it the second time?
Well, no, wait a sec. So what's your position? Are you saying that you're coming with a totally different plan, or you're coming with the same plan but a few little changes?
There was a totally different plan. But to help us go through that hurdle, we went through the exercise of assuming that Section 16 applied. So we went to the planning board, we did that consent vote, they've submitted the letter. So we will comply with that. And so to address that hurdle, what has changed? One material difference is the project that you denied was a mixed-use project. It had commercial building in the front, it had residential in the rear. This one is different in that it's only 100% residential. The second thing that is different in an obvious way is the first project requested a variance to have more than one building on a lot. We had a building out front, we have buildings out back. This one has one building. That's another materially obvious and specific change. The third one, I just lost my track. I have it in my notes, and when I find it, I will tell you. Oh, here it is. The new plan no longer proposes the construction of any buildings on the rear part of the property, which the prior plan did. So those three things are three of the major things obvious to anyone who compares Plan 1 to Plan 2. Changes of use, changes of number of buildings, and changing of location of buildings.
Right, we're still talking about Section 16 here, though, are we?
Yep.
Yeah, because we have decided Section, at another meeting, we decided Section 16 applied. Okay, that sounds cool.
So, given that, if that's the hurdle that we've now jumped over, if I've satisfied that, I don't know if you'd like me to proceed with the presentation now?
Well, so in fairness to the applicant, I think we have to present, we have to get back to him about whether he's satisfied Section 16 or not. Or do you think that he should do the whole, explain the whole project? Mr. Chairman, do you want him to explain the whole project and then we get back?
Well, from what I see, I have the whole project that you had before. I have everything here from the meeting, from the minutes to the actual application, the proposal for 10 units in the back, and then the proposal building in the front, which was business. Now, when I look at this, I look at it this way. You came before us here with this project. And with the project, you wanted a variance for mixed use, more than one building on a lot, mixed use. And you had business in there. You had a building with a business in it. Now you're taking away the building in the back, which is 10 residents, and moving it to the front. I mean, the way I look at it is, you're taking away the business part. We didn't have a problem with the business part, but now you're taking away the business part.
And that's a specific material change.
It is, but now you want to put the condos in the business building. I mean, it just seems to me that,
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Maybe, you know what, I think you were right at the very start, and I should have shut up, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we should let Mr. Riley tell the whole project, and then come back to him on what your thoughts are.
go ahead.
So I beg your pardon, very sorry.
You always do this to me.
I know, so sorry.
Okay.
If I may, I wanted to, again, handshake the record, so I will be reading this, but I wanted to give you a copy to follow along. I'm not going to trip over any wires. This is a presentation of our argument in support of the petition for the two special permits that are before you tonight. A special permit under 175-21A4 to allow multifamily use in a highway commercial zone, and a special permit under 175-35 to do work in the local floodplain and wetlands protection district overlay, the overlay district. I want to remind the board that that is a very limited area. The special permit for section 175-35 only applies to the work that's done to the westerly side of the blue line. So it's really this edge of the parking lot. We're actually, our proposal is to remove some of the pavement out of that area and plant more grass in that area. That's where the special permit is applicable to under 175-35. The petitioners have submitted a proposed plan to replace the existing building at the front of the property with one new building in the same approximate location. The previous plan proposed more than one building on this lot and contained both residential and commercial uses and was not supported by the board. This new plan is intended to address some of the comments and concerns which were brought to light at our previous hearing. The property contains 90,056 square feet, or just over 2 acres, of land within the highway commercial zone. The new plan shows our proposal to construct a single 2-story residential building. Unlike the existing building, the new building will conform to all front, side, and rear yard setback requirements. The existing building is only 18 feet off the street line. The proposed building will contain 11 dwelling units and will be 40 feet off the street line. Thus, the sight lines for exiting vehicles will be improved. The proposed use of the property is allowed by special permit per 175-21A4, and the building will be connected to municipal water and municipal sewer. The existing layout and design of the site, which contains a large paved parking area in the rear of the lot, will continue to be utilized. However, the rear parking area will be reduced in size, will be improved with new pavement, and the pavement line will be pulled further away from the residential abutters, Doughty and Adams, who are located to the south. The existing parking spaces are presently about 5 feet from that southerly lot line. The new parking lot will be between 25 to 60 feet off the property line and will now be buffered by a solid fence and planted trees and bushes. Pursuant to some of the previous comments, no buildings will be constructed in the rear portion of the property. A small portion of the rear parking lot lies within the local floodplain and wetlands protection overlay district, and thus 175-35 requires a special permit to be issued to allow the pavement removal and parking lot improvements to be undertaken in the rear of the parking lot, which again is along the western edge shown on the submitted plan. No wetlands are being filled or altered as part of this project, and no portion of the property is located within a FEMA flood zone. The property has an existing drainage system, and although parking lot and building area are not subject to seasonal or periodic flooding, it's in FEMA Zone X, a new stormwater management system or drainage system will be installed on this property and will be updated to comply with all current stormwater regulations. Under existing conditions, rainwater flows toward the northern part of our property in the existing retention basin. And if you're looking on the plan, the northern part means it's going left to right, away from Doughty and Adams, towards the right, goes behind and towards Mr. Howe's house. We will be installing up-to-date catch basins and underground drainage pipes in the new parking lot and driveway in order to collect and clean all rainwater and to allow it to continue to flow to the northern part of our property. The existing retention basin will be cleaned and brought into compliance with current stormwater management design standards. The new site plan also proposes to remove almost 5,000 square feet of pavement, thus reducing the impervious lot coverage from 37% to 31%. The project will significantly decrease the amount of stormwater runoff which currently flows toward the abutting Howe's property. The result of these drainage improvements will be to better collect, control, and clean stormwater on our property, which will benefit the residents and the abutters of our property and the health of the wetlands found in the far northern portion of our property. There is a mix of multifamily uses. Within 300 feet, there's an 18-unit building and a 24-unit building. There are single-family uses. There are office uses such as an attorney, tax accountant, surveyor, medical, and other commercial uses within 300 feet of this site along Bedford Street, which is State Highway Route 18. There is no evidence or data which suggests that traffic from these 11 residential units would overload the state highway upon which it fronts. The owner proposes to construct a new building with attractive landscaping and a parking area set back from view of the street. We believe it will be an improvement to the property and to the general streetscape of this area of town. We respectfully request that the zoning board vote to approve the requested special permits under 175-21A4 and 175-35 so that we may proceed to site plan review with the planning board and a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. Attached to that, gentlemen, is a copy of the FEMA flood map on page 2. If you turn to page 2, I've highlighted it where the locus is. It's basically dead center of this plan. And you can see in the orange circle, it shows that it is in what they call Zone X, an area of minimal flood hazard. Basically, it's not in a flood zone. It's not in a FEMA flood zone. In a note, the requested special permit under 175-35 only applies to the small area on the western side of the existing rear parking lot as shown on the plan. The FEMA flood zone map confirms that no portion of the property at 714 Bedford Street is located in a FEMA flood hazard zone. In fact, none of the abutting property to our property is in a FEMA flood hazard zone. Next, on page 3, I've submitted this previously, but I know one of the board members wasn't here. This shows you some of the nearby uses that currently exist abutting and across the street from our property. We have residential housing to our south and a commercial office building directly next door to us. On the other side of Shaw Avenue is mixed use where there's a law office, there's an apartment, and there's a 24-unit apartment building. Across the street from that is a commercial office building. We had the medical and dental use. Coming northerly on Route 18, we have an 18-unit apartment building directly across the street from us. The one families, a commercial liquor store heading more north. And then on our side of the street, we have the mixed-use buildings, commercial office building, another mixed-use building next to us, and of course, the 68 Housing Authority apartments behind us, but that's separated by a pretty big swath of wetlands. So our proposal to have 11 townhouses, 11 residential units in an area that is a mix and has one families and 24 units and 18 units, it's certainly not out of character. If anything, it may complement some of the other units and will not be noxious to the other existing property owners, which is important and is one of the things that the board should consider. Before I go any further, does anyone have any questions about the floodplain issue, the 175/35 issue? I think it's a rather limited issue in this plan. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? Or take that as a no? Okay. Then following through with the proposal for the multifamily use in highway commercial. Previously it was noted it's a highway commercial zone where they encourage commercial development. It does not prohibit residential development. It allows for multifamily development by special permit, and as the plan shows that we just reviewed, it already does exist in this area. Continuing further down the road, there's over 50 units at Lincoln Village. There's other commercial uses, and again, one of the reasons why some of the larger multifamily uses are put on a route like Route 18 is because that's intended under our zoning bylaws for more of the traffic generators to go onto the bigger roads. Now, 11 residential units is not a heavy traffic generator. Other uses that could be put on this property or other properties down the street would certainly generate more traffic and probably more noxious activities. We acknowledge that we are directly abutting residences. Mr. Howes, is Mr. Howes here today? For the board member who wasn't here, Mr. Howes lives right to the right of our driveway. We've met with Mr. House since our last meeting, reviewed this entire plan with him, gone over the drainage, the design of everything, the location, our proposed location of fences and trees, and I think we'd agree. He's very happy with what we're doing. His concern, and rightfully so, the existing conditions right now shows all pavement over here and out back here, and the pavement pitches towards his property. So when it has rain, some of the runoff gets to his backyard. That will no longer occur because John Cotter, who will hopefully speak in a few minutes, has designed this, that now first of all the pavement to the left side of the building is being removed. This will now be all lawn area, and we are increasing the front lawn area, the aesthetics of this area. Whereas the current building is only 18 feet off the street, we're now moving it 40 feet back, so over 40-foot deep front lawn as you drive by this area. The driveway that exists here is going to be upgraded, and we will be installing 2 catch basins, and it will be pitchless so that water does not flow out to Bedford Street. It stays on our property, but it goes down to our catch basins, is collected on our property, and is prevented from going into Mr. Howe's property by the catch basins themselves, but also with the berm that we'll be putting along the pavement. So all the water that now currently flows in his direction will be collected on our property, piped underground, and sent northerly into the retention pond, which currently exists on the property. We'll be cleaning it up and upgrading so that it matches current stormwater management standards. The rear parking lot, if you can see on this, the brown outline is the current amount of pavement. It's rather large, and as I mentioned, it comes right up to about 5 feet off of the current property line behind Mr. Dowdy and the Adams' house. We are now pulling it away from their property, so now all of this will be grass, and the parking lot, as I mentioned, is between 25 and 60 feet away from our neighbors on this side. We will also be installing a fence, a solid fence, and we'll also be putting in trees. That will all be reviewed by the planning board and the planning board engineer as part of site plan review. We have to conform with the solid fence. We have to label the trees, the number of trees, the location of trees, the species of trees. Also, any site lighting has to be dark sky compliant, so there'll be no glare into any neighbors, yards. This will be a residential use. A residential use will generate a quiet use on this property and also very much lower impact on traffic. In the prior meeting, one of the board members noted that a commercial use in the same location would likely generate more traffic and perhaps more customer traffic out in the rear. And I just want to note for the board some of the considerations that in the highway commercial zone, and I think the board's aware of this, but I think it should be part of, I hope that would be part of your consideration. There are other noxious, one of the things in granting a special permit is you want to know that what we're proposing will not be noxious to our neighbors. What is allowed as a right without a special permit or without a variance is the construction of a retail store either in the front or in the rear without a variance, without a special permit. We could put in a psychiatric or medical office. Actually, we wouldn't do this. We're not in this business. We don't want to do this, but another owner could. A restaurant or pub can go in here without a variance, without a special permit. Obviously, these type of uses are going to generate more traffic, more noise, later hours, especially if it's a pub. A veterinary clinic and kennel is allowed as of right on this property. Auto body shops are allowed to be constructed on this property without a variance, without a special permit, or daycare. Daycare, some would say is quiet, but it certainly is going to be a much bigger generator of traffic than 11 units. We are not overloading water or sewer. We're not overloading Route 18's traffic. It is a state highway. We essentially comply with all of the provisions of the special permit. But more importantly, I think you've received letters from some of our abutters who are asking you to support the residential use because it effectively prohibits or prevents something more noxious from coming in, which they're allowed to do as of right, but now you'd be locating that next to other existing residences. I know this has been a long road and you've heard a lot from me, so I'd like to pause and see if there's any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms.
Can I just take a look at that?
Certainly. And I like, when you have a minute, John can add to anything I've said or run down what your thoughts for the design.
Is the rear setback right here 30?
Yes, oh, yes. Marshall noted, this plan we shrunk the size of the building, and the planning board is aware of this. Okay, we brought this, we discussed.
So this is a different picture again?
Yes, it's always a work in project, Rick. One thing I think we have to all understand, this site plan review will tweak this project. It's part of the project. It is not antithetical to tweak it. Marshall noted and asked us to move the building or shrink the building. So we did that. So this building complies with the zoning bylaws. There are no variances required whatsoever. The building is now 2 feet thinner than it was. But it's still in the same location, 40 feet off of the street. Any other questions?
Mr. Riley, on the, is it on the south side there where you are retracting the hardscape parking lot? I mean, it's an angle and all that, but how many feet of permeable surface and you know, grass and bushes and stuff are you gaining?
Square footage wise, it's hard for me
No,
to
just
tell.
distance basically
Okay,
from.
it's
from
25 feet from the closest point,
Okay.
from our proposed pavement to the sideline, to the.
And what was it? What was it at that point?
5. If you notice, let me bring this to you.
Okay.
The brown is the existing pavement, goes right along the lot line. The gray is the proposed pavement. It's 25 feet here, it's about 60 to 65 feet, I believe, here. So all of this becomes grass and trees, and there'll be a solid fence added there also, as a buffer. It's a much more amenable plan to residential neighbors. Mr. Doughty's house is approximately 200 feet away from our building, but we also are protecting him from the parking lot by putting in, and also Mr. Adams, I don't want to forget about Mrs. Adams.
Currently, where's the dumpster going to be?
Dumpster would be in the rear here and would be screened. It's required to be screened in the Board of Health. There'll be evergreens around it in addition to the fence. That could change in the site plan review if the planning board or butters.
That's why I said currently.
Yes, thank you.
Did the fire department approve it?
Fire department has been given copies of this. They'll also get copies for site plan review. That's typically when they would engage. We will be required to sprinkle the building, as you know. I believe you're a firefighter. right?
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, just reiterate what Sean has said. The parking as you see it, and the drainage system as you see it, is going to conform with DEP's regulations for stormwater management, the stormwater management policy. We have to conform to that, so that the catch basins, as you can see, catch basins that are now here, they're here, there's one here in the middle of the parking lot, one here over at the edge of the parking lot, all have to conform to stormwater management policy. In other words, each one has to have a gas trap on it so that it collects the impurities. The impurities stay within the catch basin. The drainage system, so that the runoff further gets treated once it goes into the detention basin. It doesn't show here, but there is a riprap, what's called a riprap dike. That was put in when this was done previously for Mr. Dempsey. So that creates a sedimentation area within the detention basin. And then so that's further treatment, and then after that it goes into the second half of the detention basin where it'll settle, the water will settle, and then eventually go out the pipe that's the outfall pipe and into the low area or into the bordering vegetated wetlands. As Sean had said, the entire perimeter of the new pavement is going to have a bitcoin berm on it. So what ends up happening, like in this area here, as Sean had said, where you have the elevations basically go south to north, and they run unimpeded into Mr. Howe's property. Now what's going to happen is it will run. It's all going to be grass now. All the pavement in this particular area is to be removed, but it will run and be intercepted by the entryway road. The entryway road is going to be constructed like a standard road with a crown in the middle, gutters on both sides, so that the water will get trapped will get trapped in the roadway, will run down into the catch basins, and that will happen with all of the runoff that runs. As soon as it hits the pavement, as soon as any runoff hits the pavement, it's trapped in there. It can't unless you get a 100-year storm deluge. But theoretically it gets trapped within the paved area, goes into the structures, gets treated through the drainage system and out into the wetlands. The area that you were talking about, as far as this may be getting off track a little bit, but the area that you're talking about that's falls under the jurisdiction of the floodplain and wetlands protection district is about 5% of the paved area, approximately 4,700 square feet of actual pavement that is being proposed, taking out the existing pavement that's already there, which is about 3,500. So you're talking really about a net increase of the impervious area within the overlay district of about 1,000 square feet, which is a long driveway, 10 by 100-foot driveway. That's what we're talking about here as far as what falls under the jurisdiction of the special permit for the floodplain and wetlands protection overlay district. Other than that, as Sean had also said, the lot coverage, which is basically directly related to the amount of impervious area that's on the site, is getting reduced by almost 7%, which is about 7,500 square feet or more. I did that calculation, I don't have it.
About 5,000.
5,000. So there is substantially less impervious area for the new design versus the present design.
Can I
And as
ask
I
a-
said, pardon me?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
On the, what's that, the west side there, which is in the floodplain and wetland protection area,
Yes.
Mr. Riley presented that they were scaling back the impervious area. They were digging up some of the parking lot and planting some grass. You just said that the impervious area is going to increase a little bit.
A little bit, a little bit. But generally speaking,
Right.
the amount of pavement that's out there is going to be substantially less than what's there now. It's just some of it is not in the blue, on the other side of the blue area.
And if I could just for the record, I just want to file for the record a copy of the Rainey case, to harken back what we talked about earlier. And this is just a historical review of that chapter, that section 16, where it used to be section 20, and it was amended in 1975, just for the record. Thank you, John. Just to reiterate, under the terms of our zoning bylaw for a special permit, some of the items to check off, whether we qualify for a special permit, is the board would look to see if the proposal is not injurious to the public health, safety, welfare, morals, comfort, general welfare. I would submit to you that a residential use is not injurious. There are other uses that could be much more injurious. This is a very benign use there. And also, in granting the special permit, there's a few checkoffs under Part B of our definition of special permit for criteria, that it is listed in the table of uses as a special permit, and that is true. Multifamily is listed as a special permit. The second one is that the requested use would not overload public water, sewer, or drainage. I think we've demonstrated that we in fact will be improving drainage. It will not create undue traffic congestion. There's no evidence that 11 residences are going to overload Route 18. And if anything, I think we can agree that a commercial use would likely generate more traffic. It does not, or the proposal does not unduly impair sightlines for traffic or hinder pedestrian safety. As we mentioned earlier, by pulling the building back, it actually improves sightlines. So we're clicking all of the things that are required for a special permit, and that the requested use would not unduly subject hazards to any affected health, safety, or general welfare. Again, we're actually cleaning up the property, putting more green space on this property, having a quiet use on the property. Any special regulations are abided by that are set forth. The only special regulation that actually applies would be the requirement for site plan review, which we're obviously required to do that. The request is desirable for the public convenience or welfare. We have submitted letters to you from direct abutters who have asked that this be approved, that it is desirable in their minds. And we met with Mr. Howes on the property. He walked the property, and we were in the building, laid out all the plans, and Mr. Sexton and Mr. Justberg, who are also the owners of the other abutting property, the two closest abutters, have spoken in support of the special permit, and we hope you'll consider and weigh that support for us.
Okay, does the board want to talk, or do you want to wait?
Well, don't we have, we have a butters in
Yes.
the audience, so why don't we,
So
I mean,
why don't we open it to the floor?
I think so.
Okay. Open it up to the floor.
Question, who
Sue,
actually surveyed,
could you,
I'm sorry, Chris Dowding from 53 Shar Ave.
yeah,
Who actually surveyed and engineered this land?
I do.
You did, are you licensed in the state to do that?
I am, well, I work under Russell Wheatley's license.
Okay, so.
I've been doing this for 33 years.
I understand that, but if you're not licensed to do it, and Mr. Whitley physically can't get out there and do it, you're not licensed to drive my car, but you might have been driving the car for 33 years. Is the board okay with that? That's just a question I had.
For the record, the plan is stamped by Russell Wheatley as
yeah,
it was.
where is, we don't have one in front of us. Do we have one in front of us?
So the answer to the question is, are you licensed by the state?
No, I am not.
Okay.
Are these for us to keep?
Yeah. I think the board knows Much like a real estate broker's license, they have agents that work under them and they're under the broker's license. This is the same way where a surveyor's license has employees that work under it. The surveyor reviews the work and the surveyor is responsible to stamp the plan, which is what.
I have it actually, I have it.
Yes.
Just don't want to keep your,
So where are we here? Hold on 1 second.
It happens to be licensed by the state of Central Real Estate.
Surely. So for the chair, I'd just like to point out that I see that Mr. Russell Allen Wheatley signed this and stamped this. And let me see the date, February 8, 2018.
Correct. Anything that I do on a plan, before it comes to this board, is meticulously reviewed by Mr. Wheatley, and before he'll put his John Hancock on it, he makes sure that whatever I do is in keeping with best engineering and surveying practices for the Commonwealth. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. Russ and I, Russ is a hands-on guy. He's been out to this property when we were engineering the property. He was out to this property when we were surveying the property.
I think we know the quality of the work.
So we're okay.
Yeah. You're not a stranger here yourself.
I know.
Yeah, right.
Anything else, sir?
Mr. Wheatley is physically unable to get onto this property and actually walk this lot. I'm his neighbor. He's physically unable to do that, so that's a concern. The water flows north, and when the water something happens with the water, it's gonna plug up to the south. That's a huge concern for us to the south of the property.
Understood?
Highway commercial zoning is to provide locations for businesses which cater to traffic-oriented markets.
Correct.
This lot is intended to be used for business. This is the best and most appropriate use of this land is for business. It's been a viable business for 30-plus years. According to the U.S. Census Survey of Americans, housing of this type devalues single-family homes by 14%.
Excuse me.
I actually own several houses in Abington, one which abuts housing like this, and it's devalued my property greatly. And if you want some information on it, I'd be happy to provide that. We're concerned with the fire and safety protection. This project doesn't lessen the danger of fire. As far as we're concerned, it's going to increase it because you have people living there. So the first plan I looked at was 27 feet away from my property line.
Right.
And he said they moved it 2 feet, so that would make 29 feet.
It says here 30.
It says there 30, but he
Yeah.
said they moved it 2 feet, so 27 and 2 is 29.
I said the building was 2 feet thinner. So the building went from 50 to 48. The original building was 41 feet off the street, it's now 40 feet off the street, it's all math. So it's 30 feet, it conforms in every way to the setbacks.
The one I saw was 40 feet off the street and 27 feet from the arrears.
30.
The one I saw. So it's 2 feet, so that makes 29 feet, but
It's right
anyhow,
there.
that's a concern. You know, I live right there, it overlooks my backyard, it's all of a sudden, I got a 2-story building overlooking my backyard. If you don't think that's gonna devalue my property, I think it's gonna greatly devalue my property. Of all the other abutters other than Mr. Howe, this one's closest to my house out of anyone, and I have to live there. I just don't think this property, highway commercial property, is intended to just be converted. So someone's gonna come along and buy Trucci's and put up some condos, and someone's gonna come along and buy some other property and put up some condos or housing, and next thing you know, as this town grows, we need highway commercial real estate to shop at and to employ our residents, so we can all pay our bills around town. That's very important to a town. The highway commercial zoning was intended for a busy commercial spot to set up a business, and that's what it's for. And this has been a viable business that's unable to substantiate the fact that they can't run a business out of it.
Okay.
I'd be more happy with we talked about the other night about the pot zone. I'd rather have the marijuana thing here than this thing. As I look at the map, when they brought it up the other night, the highway commercial land is getting slowly but surely eaten up by projects similar to this. We're gonna have nowhere else to do our business. So that's my concern. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Leanne,
She doesn't agree with me on the pot thing.
That's
but
about it.
I'm okay with that.
you have anything to say? I'll say, anybody else? Okay, we'll bring it back to the,
Just on that, you know, I want to say something positive, is that we're doing that too, or?
oh yeah, I'll open up to the floor, so go right ahead.
We're at 700 Bedford, we're just north of the property. We feel like it would be a positive thing for us, because right now, the building's kind of dilapidated, and it has been even when it was a business. That parking lot is all tore up. The place, you know, has never looked that great. So this would be an improvement from what we can tell to our property.
Yeah.
Oh, could you say your
We're not
name?
gonna have a pot
Say
factory.
your name just for the record? I'm
Oh,
not sure.
Kyle Jesberg, 700 Bedford.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else on the floor?
Let's close it.
We'll close it to the floor. Go right ahead.
Just to respond quickly on a few things. As far as the height of the building Mr. Doughty raised, our building is not going to, it is a two-story building now. It's going to be a two-story building then, and the height won't be different. The approximate location is in the same location of the same building. Yes, it is slightly closer to the west because we conform with our setbacks. Sorry, to the south. It conforms to the setbacks. It's actually close to the Wheatley office building than it is to Mr. Doughty's building. As far as fire concerns, I think you know, under current fire code, this will be a safe building. There'll be fire sprinklers are required, and the fact that people live there, I would submit, may make it safer, because you don't have a vacant building there at night, which is what you have there now. And also, as opposed to commercial viability, it's somewhat kind of a red herring. I mean, you can go up and down Route 18. There are some empty storefronts on Route 18. It is not easy to rent commercial in Abington. It can be a risky business. You know, across the street from the ale house is empty, and they're ripping up Route 18. So people are a little skittish right now about investing in commercial entities on Route 18, because for the next 4 years, it's going to be a traffic nightmare. We're figuring people are going to some are going to avoid Route 18, some are going to can't avoid Route 18. The Route 18 can handle 11 residential units. Water is not an issue. We are not adjusting the topography between our property and Mr. Doughty or the property to the south. So anything that lands on our property is going away from Mr. Doughty and going northbound in our drainage system. Anything on Mr. Doughty's land that's coming towards us, we have to absorb that. We do it now. So that is not an issue here. But again, floodplain issue is limited to the land out back. The river is actually not on our property. It's farther away on the Housing Authority property. Again, we also have other abutters who believe that this will improve their property value because they've been living and working next to a property that has not been maintained. The dollars weren't there to keep that property maintained well. This would be owned by the residents here in this condominium who would be maintaining it with monthly condo fees. It would be an improvement. It would be a nice thing to live next door to, and it would be landscaped much more than it is now. I hope you will approve this. It is allowed use by special permit. I think we've complied with all of the requirements of a special permit. If you believe that we have not addressed any one of them, I would ask you to please bring that up, and we'll try to do so.
You want
Sure, well,
Closer to the floor?
oh, yeah.
I
I have
did-
a question for Attorney Riley, I guess, before we close it. Are these proposed units, 1 or 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom units? Do we have a?
2 bedroom, 2 baths.
Bed, 2 bath? And they're approximately how many square feet?
About 1,000.
1,000, okay. Thank you.
close to the floor?
So you look to me, but I think sufficient unto the evil thereof. So maybe I
Well, I
should
just
not
want to get
actually.
everyone's opinion.
I do have an opinion, but maybe
All right,
I
John,
should let
I
somebody
haven't heard
else
from you
talk.
yet.
Yeah, let me.
No, first I just want to clarify that one across from the ale house. In all fairness, that was closed and not open because the sewer was not allowed there. And the people that bought it, I read about that, they were from Quincy. In all fairness, the second part, the reason it's very hard to rent right now, because of widening of Route 18, why would you, and they're taking land away from it, so in fairness to that
Yeah, okay.
project, that's all I want to say for that.
All right, so, again, I went over what we went through before with this property, and like I said,
We closing it to the floor?
yes, close to the floor. And, again, when I look at this, I see, as the gentleman said here, the highway commercial is mostly locations for businesses, catering to traffic-oriented market. When I look at the old project, I see that everything was in the back, and we really didn't have a problem with the business being in the front. We were okay with that. But it was denied because of the townhouses being in the back and splitting the property into two separate constructions being done.
Right.
And now we have the business part that was there before going to be the condos. So in other words, we're changing, the idea is to change the business zoned highway commercial to basically residential, which is 11 units. Okay, that's what we're looking at right now. Marshall did get a letter from the fire department. And the fire department issued a letter to Marshall saying, per our conversation on the proposal 11 condo units being built for 711 Bedford Street, I would like to go on record as saying that the Abington...
714.
714, that the Abington Fire Department has concerns about access to the building. There seems to be access to only one side of the building, which would make it difficult to respond to the other end, 180 degrees away, 180 feet away, difficult. In other words, the fire department does have an issue with your plans.
And turning the truck around.
And turning the truck around. So just to put that on record, and I'll give you a copy of that, I know I kind of hacked it up, but there is a fire issue, the fire department does have an issue with your plan of building the condos in the front, on this plan, right here.
That would be addressed at site plan review, if they wanted something relocated or moved, that's typically a procedure.
Well, I mean, they're talking about the entrance, then you're gonna have to be changing the whole entrance, or creating another entrance, correct?
That's the first I've heard of the letter, so I haven't talked to the chief about what his
But it-
specific
But it
concern
only
is.
makes sense, because that is an issue on many plans that come in front of us. And recently, one up on Chestnut Street is the ability of the fire truck. And this one does not have that ability. The fire always has to go, in many cases, in some cases, it should go over 100 feet.
He certainly can turn around in our parking lot, it is designed for that.
Yeah,
It is designed, so I'm not sure what he says. I'm not gonna debate him, but we're looking at the use right now.
Right,
Site plan will go to the
close.
details of the layout.
okay. All right, so,
see, that's one issue. The other thing is, Mr. Dowdy, I think I hopefully pronounced it correct, I stated that the first time. The highway commercial, again, I don't want to read it again, but it is intent of the bylaw and is for providing locations for businesses which cater to traffic-oriented market or which need large expanses of land and would not be appropriate in compact. Why do we have bylaws or zoning districts if we can just say, no, we don't want to do this? Now, having to go along that area, most of the new stuff that's been there are current businesses, i.e. the bank, Harbor One, the place across the street, which is the dental place, and if you go down, Rosie's was a restaurant, but that is not that many years old compared to a lot of these houses which have been there forever. I know I live at Lincoln Village, they've been there 35 years. So having said that, to go along that was an issue that I had. There's another one here, is the intent, the general welfare was concerned about the water. And what do you have to say? I'll defer to you.
Okay, so we began by talking about that this hearing is really at the outset governed by Chapter 40A, Section 16, that you were asked to go to planning, or you went to planning, and planning sent it back to us to have a look at it again, and we have to decide whether it is different, and we have to describe these changes in the record. And I think that John and Sean, really did speak to, as much as they could, to the changes. Yeah, but it's still an 11 apartment complex. It was that in February. It is that now. The use is changing, so that it was residential and commercial, which I thought was a good idea, but it's now only residential. But the two special permits requested are exactly the same as the original application. Therefore, different or alternative forms of relief are not being requested. And Section 1640A requires specific and material changes which must be something less than differences so radical that they obviate scrutiny under the statute altogether. Additionally, the 2017 denial was not just based upon the proposed mixed commercial and residential use. The 2017 decision states that there was a concern regarding overdevelopment of the property, along with the proposal not being in harmony with the neighbourhood. So, based on those points, I actually do not think that there are material changes that have been occurred in the conditions, and that this is very similar, if not the same, to the prior proposal. And, I would suggest a motion on that, but that's what I would think.
Well, I'm not a voting member. I usually don't disagree with town council and rarely disagree with you, Mr. Bergen. How I read town council's notes and general law chapter 48, chapter 16, I saw the rejection of the previous plan as primarily a overdevelopment of the property. So I see it substantially scaled back to the point of not requiring a variance.
Yeah.
I also think, and this is the one point where I
But
disagree
he
with
didn't
town
ask for variance, though, right? Did
No,
I mess
There's
it
no
up?
variance on this one. no.
He's not
Oh.
asking for variances on
That's
this
right,
one.
sorry.
That was to split up the property,
The
correct?
previous one was for 2 buildings, which I think, in my opinion.
10 units, they went to 11.
Yes.
I'm not particularly worried about that. It was more of, I don't think 11 units on 2 acres is overdevelopment. I mean, and this, again, my opinion, also, in regards to asking for exactly the same petitions or relief, one's always going to be there because the property is on the floodlands and wetland protection district. So the second you break a piece of concrete, once you go over that blue line, you're going to need to ask for that. So it's really just, in my opinion, I see this as substantially different. I happen to agree with the planning board on that. So I would urge, in regards to General Law, Chapter 40A, Subchapter 16, that I see the petitioner as having met the requirements or cleared that particular hurdle. So it's 1-to-1.
Right, right.
Well, again, you can look at
But
the
I don't
old,
vote,
you
so.
can look at the old project and you see what they wanted. And now, again, we didn't have an issue with the business building. Now that business building is gonna become condos. And that's the change, from a business area to residential. That's what we're looking at. And the special permit isn't granted automatically, it's asked. Okay, it's not automatically given. So, do we want to change an area that's supposed to be business over to residential? That's the question here.
Right.
You want to make a motion? Or do you want to discuss it more?
You can, John, if you want.
Well, I think, do we, in terms of procedure, since Mr. Bergen brought it up, do we need to address Chapter 40, General Law, Chapter 40A, Subchapter 16 first?
I think we do, Bill, because, you know, if we go further to talk about the project, it's just like any other project, you know, as poor Mr. Riley is saying, and we're talking about the strengths and weaknesses of this project. But the whole issue, I mean, I actually didn't know about 40A Section 16 until our last meeting, but the whole issue about 40A 16 is whether they can get a second bite of the apple.
Right.
Isn't that right? And
Right.
that's it, you know, so...
But
So
it-
that would be what we, I think, respectfully, that would be what we have to address, like Bill said. We have to decide whether there were changes. And, you know, John and Sean did actually speak to that. So that's what we have to address, is whether we think there are enough changes. I don't think that there are enough changes. I think it's still the same plan and still the same issue.
Same issue, yes.
Yes, I mean, to what you said, I mean, the bylaw that talks about the permits talks about the nature and condition of adjacent structures and use in the district within which it is. So, which is what you're saying. Well, this is a commercial district, and then we're talking about residential, and that was an issue in the last meeting.
But they're not asking for that. When they come to petition, they're not asking to, if they, what they're asking for is a special permit. That's what probably we should vote on. I mean,
Well, I quoted
You know
the
what I'm
special permit. I quoted the special permit.
Yeah.
They're not asking for a variance.
No.
The first time they came in
Right.
February was for 2 special permits.
That's why I thought...
And now they're asking for 2
No,
special
they
permits.
asked for a variance and 2 special permits last time they were
Before,
here.
and now it's just
Not
special
last
permit.
month, but the plan that was rejected, how many months ago?
September.
September.
So the bottom line is that
Okay.
we really have to go by, we have to answer the question of
So that's
what
why
they're
I saw
asking
it as
for.
substantially different.
And then if you want to say, you want to add on to what the lawyer is asking us, that's fine.
Respectfully, I think you do it the reverse. If you are to approve it, you need to justify it by listing your material changes. If you don't approve it,
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you want to make sure you don't
And-
approve, if you don't approve it, that,
In a special permit, you do not have to go into detail. It's wise, maybe, but you do not have to go as far as, and that much.
it would be helpful, because whatever the next application is, the next owner, we'd love to hear your guidance, your reasons for not liking this, it would be helpful.
how do you want to handle it, guys?
Unless you approve it.
I happen to agree with Dennis, and I'm going along with, I believe in what town council cites here, and she did get the backup, so it's not something that's just randomly given to her, and
But we still have to vote on a special permit tonight. So let's not forget that. So does anybody want to make a motion?
Well, so the motion in the positive should be, was there a specific and material change occurred in the conditions upon which the unfavourable decision formally was based? In other words, were there changes from the last plan?
yeah, so we
And
make a motion on it.
does anybody, so I make a motion, so I'll say, make a motion to positive, was there material changes that occurred in the conditions on which the unfavourable decision was based? Was there changes? All those who think that there were changes, say aye. All those who think there were not changes?
Aye.
So I, you know what, I'm borrowing the chairman's position, so.
It's
you know,
okay, no,
I don't mean
it's
to do
okay.
it, but
I'm gonna let you run with
I'm
this.
actually not saying it
I'm going to let you
right.
run with it. Go ahead.
I'm not saying it right, but that would be the motion. So let me see, but I wouldn't make a positive motion because I actually think there's no change. So maybe I would have to make a motion saying that there are no material changes which have occurred in the conditions upon which the unfavourable decision was based, the previous unfavourable decision was based. I make that motion.
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so,
So,
okay.
okay, so we've decided under 48 section 16 that there is no, there's no change. Now, I'm not too sure if we have to go further on.
I
Do have
think
to
we
go further
should,
on?
just for the record, and make sure that we cover what we came here for. So in other words,
Special permit.
yes.
two of them, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so,
So, John, you want to make that?
Seems odd, but
Yeah.
go ahead, because you're basically saying they don't have a right to bring the petition to the table for the past hour and 5 minutes. Just saying. So
I s-
why would we vote on it? I
I've
didn't go to
already,
law school.
I don't believe it applies at all. I've already made that clear.
Here for kicks.
yeah. Well, that's why I actually
Well, I
started.
think we
the
should have
zone-
done it the other
I
way.
was in favor
I think we
of
should have
that.
done that the other way. I think we should have just denied the special permit if you're going to deny it, or don't deny it. I don't know
Well,
if you're doing this wrong or not.
sorry, I think we had to address it, because we made the poor, right, you went to the planning board to actually talk about whether there was a change or not, so I think we had to address that. But have we made a motion on the permits? So, make a motion to deny or approve?
Yeah.
Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do this?
Yes, please.
So, I make a motion to deny the petition of 714 Bedford Street Realty Trust, also 714 Bedford Street LLC, 2 Tiffany Lane, Rockland, for a special permit under 175, Section 21A4 for multi-unit residential dwelling in a highway commercial zone, and a special permit under 1735 to construct in the floodplain and wetlands protection overlay district at 714 Bedford Street.
Just so I'm clear,
A second.
you're asking to deny both of them in one motion?
Yes, is that right? Okay, well,
Yeah, you can, I just,
Yeah, you can.
okay.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you, gentlemen, for your extensive amount of time that we all put into this. Good night.
There's a lot. Well, it may go forward.
I'm sorry?
It may go forward. Sean, I actually read out what the council had written to us. So, because I got there's an issue about whether council, I feel that you should have the wording that council gave us, but that's why I read it out.
No, I agree. I think
Will
you're,
be
with all
in-
due respect, I think you're misinterpreting it, but that's okay. We can talk about this later when you guys have more time.
Well, it may well be. I mean, that's why in the record it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always respected your opinion, guys.
Oh,
Have a nice night.
you too. Good luck, John.
See you next month.
No phone ringing. No,
No phone call.
no.
It being after 7:05
Good luck,
PM,
John.
Abington Zoning Board of Appeal will hear the petition of Michael Slavin, 244 Park Ave, Abington, for a side setback variance under 175-29 for proposed deck at 244 Park Ave, property located on Assessors Map 32, Lot 13, in the R30 zone. Thank you for waiting.
You're welcome. That was actually interesting. I've never been in something
It was
like
too
this.
interesting, really. It was way too interesting.
That was tough.
Way too interesting, believe
There's
me.
there's probably going to be an opening if you're interested.
I finally found out why that place isn't being developed across from the Ale House, so that was worth it.
And see, that's important. If you don't know that, people
Yes,
would
sir.
say, oh, it's gotta be, there are issues, but the biggest reason was sewer, because I even asked that question.
Okay,
let's move forward.
all right, let's move forward here.
You guys can talk about that afterwards.
Right,
We'll meet at the pub.
go ahead, make your
I am
proposal.
asking for a side setback variance for a deck on my property. My property's on a non-conforming lot.
Right.
Built in 1925. The deck would go directly off the back of the house. And because my property at that point is 40 feet, there's no way to do that without a variance. Or 45 feet.
Okay.
So,
A variance is requested. All right.
I have, here's, if I can, I'm looking for my notes there. Your problem here you have is that you're asking for a variance. And it's an R30, which used to be a 20. So in your case, it is easier and less burdensome on your part to prove, because you have to prove everything, that this is, it's easier to go with a finding for what you're looking for. It's a process in between the two, of a special permit and and it's easier, I mean, than a variance. you technically do not need the variance.
Because it's non-conforming.
So you can do one of two things, okay? We can vote you down, but what you can do, and the board can, if so doing, and is to allow you to withdraw the variance if we so desire it as a board.
And maybe there's a third thing.
I'm just going to say it, go ahead.
The attorney said, the
Exactly.
council said that the zoning board itself, rather than ask you to re-advertise and go to the expense of that, we can reclassify the actual request. Let me see, the ZBA may reclassify
Right.
variance relief to change it or to include the request for a finding, provided that the ZBA is satisfied that the substance of what is sought was clear in the application and in the legal advertisement, and that both reflect the nature of the relief sought. But the applicant simply did not identify the correct provision or provisions of the zoning bylaw. So, she actually mentions a case called Deteau versus Zoning Board of Appeals of Webster, 47 Mass Appeals Court 664, 1999. So it's a 99 case. But it simply means that we can decide ourselves to reclassify as long as what you've asked for and the advertisement is the same. Is the same, it has the same substance.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Exactly.
So-
You following what he's saying?
So deny variance, not a good idea. Withdraw, very expensive, or thirdly reclassify.
And having said that, it was the building inspector, because I asked him that question. Is this a finding or, because we had a similar one
Yeah,
on
one just
Park
like
Street.
this, yeah.
So, and then he went to council, that's what her response to it, which is an easier burden on your part for a finding. And I did go to the property and looked it over pretty closely, and I was concerned about the wetlands, and then the wetlands overlay, because you didn't mention it, but you're not in it, so it makes you.
And decks are not pervious, or they're
Exactly.
Right.
so permeable, thank you. So historically, over the decades, we have allowed, and I'm not positive we've been correct all the time, we've granted less than what people ask. We've never granted more. We've never allowed someone to have a variance when they've asked for a special permit. But we have on occasion realized that, because you're a homeowner, you're not an engineer, you're not, Attorney Riley isn't representing you, that these things happen. And so, in the past, the board has felt that, what you're asking for is the same. You're still asking to put a deck in your side yard. And all your abutters got notification that, Mr. Slavin wants a deck. So they have been, legally notified that they can come speak of such a subject. I think what town council said is, if you choose to go forward with the reclassification, you run the risk of legal challenge if for some reason someone gets a bee in their bonnet, that you were granted something that wasn't, by the legal letter specified and asked for.
Right.
Okay? So that's what the whole thing was saying, is basically you have two or
Well,
three
actually,
options. Am
so-
I incorrect?
Well, I think so,
Somewhat.
because he's asking for the same thing.
He still
It's
could get
just-
challenged.
It's just,
Oh,
no,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
challenge is just about notice.
Right.
Because you're
Don't
gonna,
forget, we have already done this on the same street.
yeah.
Right.
So-
Well, Park Ave
So he's
does
just asking
all the
for
time.
a variance, and we're saying you don't need a variance.
Yes, exactly.
And the only issue is that on the notice in the newspaper, it said
Said
variance.
Right.
And so the only risk you have, but it's so close, the description of everything that you wanted, that the only challenge would be, due process. In other words, your neighbor would say, well, I
course, it's
wasn't
being recorded,
noticed
so
that they were going to
hopefully
ask for a
everyone likes it.
finding instead of a variance, yeah. So I really don't think, I mean, it's a risk,
Right.
but
It's
it's
a
only,
risk, but
it's
it's
only
a-
to do with notice. It's not to do with what you asked.
I mean,
You're
you've done
asking
it,
for the
you
same
you
thing.
actually, notified everyone. So, I mean, that's a plus right there, so. And again, we have done this before where we take the variance away and,
Well, that was for a finding once he found it. And again, in your case, you're an R30, which is very restrictive compared to an R20. But in defense of your particular case, even though it's supposed to be your burden to prove it, your location was an R20. That whole street was, and it was reclassified. It used to be 20,000. I don't think anybody has 20,000 except for maybe a couple doors over. So,
The railroad does.
that's right.
but
Domain.
otherwise, so you have, it's a really difficult situation, and
Just to clarify one thing, Nancy, voting members, John,
Okay,
Bill,
thank
me.
you.
I'm sorry, I was just moving
Such is
on.
life.
so I'm done talking.
Okay.
So it's your decision. First of all, you can talk, then you can decide which route you want to go.
Well, he's the homeowner, so I'm gonna let him
Yeah.
make all his own decisions there.
Yeah,
So,
what I'm hearing is
just to
that
eliminate the
if,
variance, that's what you're saying.
Right.
That would be the,
and if I do that, do I have to come back later with the finding?
no, that's why we're
We'll
doing
do
it
the
now.
finding
Now.
now.
Otherwise,
The finding now?
Yes,
Yes.
this is
Somebody
Otherwise-
could come out of the woodwork and
Yes.
challenge it.
On a
And that's,
technicality, not just on.
that's our town lawyer said.
but if you decide to go, and say you want to run and reclassify, you have to go through the same process of paying for everything.
All over again.
So now that's something to think about
It's
twice.
another 30-day delay and then a 30-day delay on the appeal.
Yes.
So now you're
So
60
you-
I would
days.
rather avoid the delays. I have spoken to my.
So it's your decision, you have to see
neighbors
it.
and
Sure thing.
That's important,
they-
yeah.
That the one who is actually closest to the property line and I had a conversation and his big concern when he read the notice that he got was that I was actually building off the side of the house. He didn't understand that it was, because it was a side
Right,
setback.
Right.
Right.
So he said he was cool with that.
Next time, just get that in writing.
Oh, I have a text. I don't think that's.
Oh, that's
I
good.
don't think that's admissible.
We're not
That
that
text is good.
dense.
It is writing.
It is
Okay.
good.
Hopefully you don't have to come back.
All right, so, did we want to open it up to the floor? Are there any neighbors? All right, no neighbors, okay, close it to the floor.
It's always good when there's no burning torches. at
Yes, excellent idea,
everything.
yeah.
Just saying.
So what do you guys think?
It's pretty clear cut, you got a
So-
certified engineer.
What would you want to do on this situation?
Do you want to continue right now
I would
and
like to
ask for a
continue,
finding?
yeah.
and stuff?
And we're going for a finding.
I would like.
All
to
right, so
continue.
the variance,
We'll change that in the,
okay.
in the,
All right, so we're going to go for the finding. All right. Gentlemen?
No, the key there is they got the plan here, that looks pretty good. And I did visit the site. It's a very small house, but in the back, there's lots of land. And it's got, again, once you get an engineer signing
Yeah.
it, that's critical. So puts the onus on those people and not us. Okay, I don't have any further questions.
Anybody else? Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion, well, you got it there.
oh, thank you. So on the petition of Mr. Michael Slavin, 244 Park Ave, Abington, for a side setback finding under 17529 for proposed deck at 244 Park Ave, property being located on Assessors Map 32, Lot 13, in our 30 zone, be approved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All set.
Thank you.
All right, good luck with everything.
So there's still, Nancy has a letter for you, and there's still a 30-day, something could come out of the woodwork.
Was it that long?
We like them that way. And that was complicated, that's why I put it.
Yeah, we just made sure that all the bases were covered on that one, so.
Thank you very much.
All right, take
Good
care.
luck.
Thank you.
It being after 7:15 PM, the Abington Zoning Board of Appeals will hear the petition of Philippe Faria, 167 Randolph Street, Abington, for a special
No,
permit.
Nicole first.
Oh, Nicole Burns?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nicole Burns.
Excuse me. Ladies
Sorry,
first.
he's been,
Ladies first, my
he's
apologies.
missed a couple of meetings, so he's a little,
I'm new here.
yeah.
On the petition of Nicole Burns, 37 Linwood Street, Abington, for a special permit under 17532I for an in-law apartment at 37 Linwood Street, property located on Assessors Map 7, Lot 35 in the R30 zone. Good evening.
Good evening.
We're opening up to you for your proposal.
You have the
Okay,
floor.
it's not a big one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
To disappoint.
Just the three of us.
We're just taking the existing basement, and making it, it only has a half bath now, putting in a standing shower and a small kitchen so my parents can move in downstairs.
Okay, just, I got one little issue here.
Okay,
By our regs, you can only have 50% of the total building use, which is 2,300, I think, 2,304, or 900, whichever's less.
yeah,
So if we are to approve it, you would have to be at the 900 down below. That'd be a condition that the building department would get, the building.
yes, I believe it fell under that.
Is it under?
No, because not the way your design, your floor is looking.
Well,
If you take the utilities and storage out, yes.
That's not included with the renovation, that's
Okay,
not
so
part
that
of their
should be
area.
so
that's
stated.
common area,
Yes.
as you would say.
Okay, so that should be so stated then, not part.
Oh, I noted that on the
Oh, I
proposed
think
work
you-
So
project.
that's on this page here.
Sorry.
You know what, I didn't look at that one. Where did I get that one?
I have another one if you'd like one.
This one right here?
This one here.
Yeah, I did see that one. Yep.
Okay.
And
How'd
this
you
one
get
too
that
is the same.
Nancy likes me.
I guess you don't like this one.
No, it's all right, believe me.
Okay.
I'm just, as long as it's not in there, so.
I got like
So that was a concern,
Did you get four of them?
that's a town
one of
bylaw.
these
You probably
here.
got four of them.
Okay, so just so you'll know, so
Yeah.
now you qualify
look
as
at
far
the
as
right
that
one.
part of it.
Okay.
So that's not an issue there.
Okay.
So how much,
37
how much square feet is it that you're looking
I
for?
got
You got it?
Let me see. I had it all mapped out here when I put this all together.
Apparently, you got a good
Utilities, yeah, I got it. Yep. You did right.
Basically just this.
You did
Right.
But there was one more page on mine that had that.
Oh, my God, it's stuck.
Oh,
What's that?
Do you
static
get it?
electricity.
So
The
sorry,
next
how much
page.
square feet are you looking for?
Next page.
Yep.
There you
Well,
go.
it'd be 48 times 2.
No, you're fine.
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought I put that in the
Half
application,
12.
didn't
So you have utility and storage,
It should be
It's not
what he's
included.
looking for. You
and
got,
then you have a basement exit, which is good.
Yeah.
What type of exit is that gonna be? Is that gonna be a door or?
I? There is a door there right
it
now,
has to be.
in the back.
Okay.
But he asked a good question. Do you have that dimension?
Yeah, hold on. Let's see.
But the key here, it has to be 900 or less.
So-
780 square feet?
780 square
Excellent.
feet.
So you'll be required, if this does go through, to sign an affidavit on an annual basis stating that the tenants are relatives of yours.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and as soon as you stop using the property, if we approve it, it reverts back to its original use. You're aware of that?
Yes, when we were, we just recently moved to this property in November. During the process of moving, we were looking for a home with an in-law or something that could be an in-law, and we were told through the whole process, once there's a change of hand as far as people purchasing, that you do have to request it again, so.
See, it's something that this town has accepted, but really, it's been something they frowned on, and I always thought they did, but it's the other way around. But the state has just changed their thinking and because of elderly people, and they want someone to care for them, and that's the reason, so. I have no objection.
Do you want to open it to the floor?
Yes, I'm
sir?
going to open up to the floor. Anybody?
Mr. Faria, you have anything to say
Anybody?
regarding this?
No?
You're
Okay.
probably generally in favor of it. I would-
Because he's next, same.
Okay, close it to the floor. Gentlemen?
I'm for it, so I
I'd
don't,
like to make a motion on the petition of Nicole Burns, 37 Linwood Street, Abington, for a special permit under 175-32I for an in-law apartment at 37 Linwood Street, property located on Assessors Map 7, Lot 35 in the R30 zone, be approved.
second,
All in favor? Aye.
have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And she'll give you the paperwork.
And rolling right along.
And last but not least, the Abington Zoning Board of Appeal will hear a petition of Mr. Philippe Faria, 167 Randolph Street, Abington, for a special permit under 175-32I for an in-law apartment in existing finished basement at 167 Randolph Street. Property located on Assessors Map 52, Lot 18 in the R30 zone. Hello.
Hey, how are you, gentlemen? So I purchased this property last year, and now it's a finished basement already, about 8 feet high, and there is a bathroom there, and 2 bedrooms, and an office space. So I just need to add a kitchen and remodel the bathroom. So
Who's
it's an
going
in-law
to be living there,
apartment.
sir?
So
My
who's the-
wife's parents?
Your wife's parents?
Yes,
And where are they at the moment?
and they live in Rockland.
Okay, now, the question too, I noticed on, when you did your impact statement, you didn't state whether this was subject to town bylaws, the water is in the wetlands, or, because when I drove there,
Oh, the property in the back, it is called a buffer zone,
okay,
from the back of the property.
But this is all interior renovation.
Yes, interior.
Interior, there's
correct.
nothing
Right.
done outside.
There's nothing gonna be there. Now, again, here, is there a door leading outside
There is a door.
in the basement?
Yes, a walkout
Okay.
basement.
All right.
now, again, here, just so you'll know, you're allowed 900 square feet,
Yes.
and
So the premise is gonna be about 800 square feet.
800?
Yes.
Okay, and you have 6 parking spaces, is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's a big parking lot, definitely fit more car, but 6 cars is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, now, are you
Very
living
big,
there now?
it's about
'Cause
1 acre.
when I went there, it looked like it wasn't, are you living there now, or?
Yeah, no, I'm living there now. I moved there last year. February.
Okay. Said around 800 feet. Cannot exceed 900.
Those are the things Marshall will keep an eye on.
Yes, and that's why I want it in the conditions. You already asked that question. Again, as was stated earlier, this property, once your your in-laws
They move
move,
up.
unless you bring in some new in-laws, that reverts back to the original use. And you have to certify it once a year with town hall. It's usually January. And there's a yearly fee, but just go take it with the building department.
Every year I have to come in here. and
You have to
fill-
do and certify that the people live in there.
Okay.
The fear there is that somebody starts renting it and stuff like that, and
In case something happens.
then you become a safety issue in that.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, open it to the floor, close it to the floor. Gentlemen? Gonna be three of us again?
It's, to me, again, to reiterate, this is now pushed more from the state, though the town bylaws usually are more restrictive. They don't, but in a case like this with rising health costs and all that stuff, so it's becomes a desire of the state. So that, Governor Baker signed that.
So regarding that, on the petition of Felipe Faria, 167 Randolph Street, Abington, for a special permit under 175-32-1, I, for an in-law apartment in existing finished basement at 167 Randolph Street. Property located on Assessors Map 52, Lot 18 in the R30 zone be approved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Thank you.
Dan.
Thank you.
But guys, before we close out, I want to let you know that I went to the planning board meeting the other day, and there's a petition to take away our special permits in the floodplain,
Yes, I read that.
and I just want to let you know, it's,
Was it
I don't know if it's because of things that we have denied, I have no idea, but I just want to, I just want to put it out there that there are things that have come out within the last couple of weeks that kind of affects us in
Was that
And
for all properties, or was that just for commercial?
commercial highway.
And so that was the idea, was basically if they have to go before planning for most of what's going on, they should have the yay or nay over whatever it is,
For-
175.
When I went to the,
35.
when I went to the planning.
But there is a case, if I can interrupt, case where not necessarily the site plan review should be hearing everything. And it is accepted, I've just read that one, where it's, they like to see two different thoughts going into this and not just one. And it was even said it was streamlined at the planning meeting as,
Yes, and I'd just like to say that I did go to the meeting, and as the chairman of the of the zoning board, that I thought that it was kind of like thrown out there, we didn't really know about it. Nancy let us know, like,
Right.
I think a week before, and we never, Attorney Riley came here and he basically gave us a list of things that they wanted to change, and a lot of things that he wanted to change were not on that list that went to the planning board, especially about the Muppet area. I just want to say, they're changing things by the week, and and I
It's
did
always at
stand
the
up for
last
the
minute.
board, I just thought that, I did it on my own, I thought I'd stand up for the board and say, that I thought that, it was a shot to us that they would try to take that away from us, that the right to do the special permits for that particular area. And again, I don't know if it's because we have turned down a lot of projects and all we've done, and this board has ever tried to do, is to do the best for the town, not for the individuals. I feel that this board has done that. We try to stay with what we have here for the bylaws, and I feel like we've really done it for the benefit of the town, not for the benefit of any individual.
And now, if I'd like to add, if I can, two things. One is, the planning board in the town is thinking and suggesting that they go to a complete revision of our bylaws.
Right.
Excluding the sign law.
And that was on the selectmen's meeting.
Right.
last selectmen's meeting.
Now, having said that, what the reasoning behind, and the planning board has started even looking into it, they have two different venues, I was told. One is they hire a professional firm, there's like 3 companies or so that do it for about $100,000. And then there is a college that does it for about $10,000, and that's the way the planning board was leaning. But as town council has even said, that our bylaws are all over the place, they're very hard to interpret back and forth. So it seems to be a consensus with a lot of the board and the selectmen to redo. The selectmen are for it, and the town manager is for it, from what I understand, of going for the revision. So therefore, that leads to the next thing. A lot of these changes that they're proposing, to me, is why are we doing that if they're going to be going through all of that when they're just going to probably be thrown on the wayside?
Right, the weekly changes before town meeting, in other words.
And that happens almost every year where they come in a flurry of them, and we don't even get to discuss them sometimes.
No, and again, like I said, things were brought up in front of us, and some of them were not brought up at that planning board that I went to. I just want to say that I felt it my obligation to at least go to the meeting and ask questions, and just to let them know that, at least what I felt about that particular proposal to take the special permits away from us in the floodplains.
As a matter of fact, I don't think we ever have turned a proposal down strictly on anything based on the floodplain wetland protection district unless they were, building right in the middle of a swamp.
But I have, we have, it has been included,
It's been
it has been
addressed.
included with some of our, denials, and I'm not gonna say that.
It can be
Are
a
you
factor,
saying like
yes.
there was like 3 things and then that was one of the 3?
Yeah, that was one of the 3 things. I'm not saying it's
That wasn't the
directly.
primary one, is what?
Yes, that's what,
Exactly.
yes,
As Bill said.
but still, again, we have turned down things, and all of a sudden, the bylaws seem to be going different, so.
What I'm getting about, leading up to, too, the changes, proposals for tonight, again, I didn't get a chance to read them. I've had a lot going on. Son got married, et cetera, et cetera.
Congrats.
But as a result, I didn't get a chance to read them, and I really feel that if nothing else, we should postpone it till next month.
No, I just want to bring it to your attention, that I think that people should read it, and just that, they change by the week, so that's all I got to say.
One of the changes, too, that really gets me in that new district, they want to go up 60 feet.
Big fan of that.
Now you're heading into city,
I mean, there's a ton of changes. I know,
60 feet
I
high.
really think
Now
you
you
should,
need a new fire truck.
yeah.
that's what I mean, everything changes.
I think you really should watch the selectmen's meeting, because we were brought up a few times, so, the
Yeah.
changes, I should say. And I just thought it was important that I go to the planning board meeting and just speak up for us. They saved me for the last, second to last,
Yeah,
so.
you got one
So I
there.
did get my, I did get to show our opinion, at least my opinion, that I thought it was kind of strange that the taking special
I
permits away
echo
from us.
what
Well,
you said,
it
and I would have
seems-
gone too.
It seems like there are four movements at the moment going around in town about building town politics. I mean, first there was really the pushback of contractors on some of our decisions, and we only do the bylaws. We only say what we follow the bylaws. But there were some decisions that we made, for instance, the technology district, and when Mr. Riley had a whole list of changes, I gather that maybe going on this, the planning board hasn't adopted them, but I gather that he has a separate petition. You only need, I think, 10 people to put a petition on.
Yeah.
So he has a separate petition, and those are from the contractors, responding to some of our decisions. Now, that might be how bylaws and laws are changed. I mean, that might be the right way to do it, that there's something, but that's what those are. The second movement is the marijuana movement. So I was at
That's huge.
hysterical meeting that John was at, of the selectmen, where the planning board unveiled a plan in which the entire route of 123 from Rockland to Brockton was going to be an area to sell marijuana.
There was the proposal.
Yeah, it was hysterical. You should have seen the poor selectmen.
pulled
So
I really
they,
felt bad for the people that were at the meeting, because they were the older seniors and very concerned about the Walmart
But I think-
district area there.
I think
so-
they've cut it back now, and I understand that.
It changes by
in
the week.
Yes, it changes by the week, but I think at the moment they're looking at the area where that is the technology zone and the
Yeah.
industrial zone, which is, the Weymouth side.
Well, but there was
Uh,
interesting in that was the windmills were there, and inside that, changing it to be
There was a lot of
accepted.
stuff.
And I had mentioned to the planning board, is windmills, is that going to be a new thing for Abington? And they voted that, they kind of crossed that one off.
I mean,
that
it's
list.
exciting. There's also, when we talk about marijuana,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
when we talk about marijuana, we also have to talk, I think that there is a petition going for actually banning marijuana, and I think this is.
Yeah, we got a
Isn't it too
huge.
late?
No.
we got a
It's
huge-
actually-
I
It's
happened to
actually
be in
in
the
it.
sign review committee last night. Believe me, that's getting pretty tedious. Now we're into, Mr. Rowley came and wanted some changes. Town council was there. Amy was there last night, Queasel. And the town can request 6 months extension normally, but now the state has increased it to a year. And then they can go for a ban if they want for a year, then you can re-vote it, whatever. So there is some timeframes that they're discussing now, which I did not know about until last night.
I think they're looking at the other towns. So the towns around Abington some of them have actually outright banned it already.
Yes, Wyndham
and-
just did.
That's interesting, because when the whole law was initially proposed, I thought I had read or heard that towns couldn't exempt themselves from the sale.
And
so
this
then
is
that
what
was a-
she said
that
last
was a
night.
change.
She said it's still so sketchy. I shouldn't say word sketchy. It is still so developing.
Right.
And it's unraveling almost daily.
The
that It's very
process.
hard, the process, it's so hard to get a grasp on it that most towns are doing that. They're opting to go with the moratorium for another year. Now they just found out. This is only recently. And then the ban, and then they can revisit once the things settle down.
What they ought to allow is municipalities to tax it on their own.
Well,
Because
see,
right
that,
now, there's what, a 2% tax, which is not even enough to manage the oversight.
This is just a general conversation here we're having live,
just saying.
so I know, I
well,
understand.
no, but again, when you say that, and you're absolutely right, and this is their conversation,
At the selectmen's meeting about the money.
yeah, and how much money does it generate?
Not much.
Well, not as much as I think a lot of people thought, because
Right.
now you're gonna need probably more police,
Yeah,
and then you might need health.
yeah, sure.
So it becomes, does that expense offset it? There's a lot of good questions that, a
Yeah.
lot more debate is.
And the planning board, I think, is really gonna be spearheading that. But I just wanted to
Okay.
let you guys know that, read those things, the changes that possibly could happen, do affect us, and not in a good way. Again, I spoke up for us. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I spoke up, and I just want to say that I think, personally, I think our board does the best we can.
I'm very impressed the way we've come, because when I first got on this board, it had a long way to go.
So,
But I think
So
it's
I-
more, we're more for the townspeople
Yeah.
than just the
And that's the way it should be,
individual.
because when I first got on here, it was basically, whenever, it was basically geared for the contractor, the businessman, and not the abutters. And in most towns that I found out, it's the other way around. The abutters have to say more so, because they live there. And when I was in the gasoline business, going in front of these board meetings, guys would say, would you come there and help me? And I said, yeah, I'll sit behind you. You have a question, you ask me. Because if they find out that I work for the oil company, they're gonna make us do a lot more for your property. They're gonna make you put up signs and this and that for the town. So the best thing is, I don't wanna go in front of them, because they hate the businessman in most towns.
so just to end, I was saying there's four things. There's the pushback from the contractors, there's marijuana, there's signage.
a
And
busy
then
year.
the last one is the bylaws. And there, there is, I think there might be a move to suggest that there should be new zoning bylaws. And I think we actually think that's probably a good idea, because, we're
Things have been changed around so many
so
times
much.
over the
It's very
years.
difficult, because even one of the meeting that we spent all the time on 48, section 16, the issue behind it all was the special permit. The guy only needed a special permit, and that's the only one where there's a special permit in that
And
table.
that particular
Change
one,
the
and
whole
that
use.
particular one there would be, the new bylaw would be taken away from us. We
Well,
would not have the.
Oh, really?
Here's what's
In what
interesting.
the building would do, yeah.
Interesting last, no, here's what interesting was at the sign meeting last night was, we're discussing about some of the sign one, and they want to keep the sign in the planning board. And I said, because the town voted meeting on it, so I said, aren't you the one that made this change last year, that it went to them? And I said, secondly, what happens if it's not a site plan review? So why? And town council did weigh in and said it should stay with the zoning board.
Okay, on that note,
I suggest that we address the last part of our meeting tonight, which is the
So I make a
Proposals.
motion to review the proposals, the proposed changes, and postpone
On our
that
own.
to May.
next meeting. Second?
All in favor?
aye,
Make a motion to end.
second,
All in favor?
Adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
turn that thing off. Don't get yourselves in trouble. If we haven't already. Well. Whatever. Thank you, Nancy.